Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And today is Monday Fun Day.
Hey, stop what you're doing, cause I'm about to ruin the image of me that you're used to. I look money, a king bee making honey, see? Deep state, I hope you're ready for me. Now gather round, I'm the new sheriff in town. All my people rise up and stand your ground. Now drink up all the Diet Coke you got on your shelf. So just let me introduce myself. My name is Trump D. I like my mashed potatoes lumpy. Fake news, oh, how I like to punk thee. That little sniper. He took a shot, but he missed me. I'm like the ever-ready bunny, still going strong and spunky. So put on your big boy pants. Come on, let's do the dance. And yeah, safe to assume the communist agenda gonna end up in a tomb. Whoa, crazy! I always really phase me. You never catch me because you're just too lazy. Now join me and my homie Vance, cause this is how we do the dance. Trusty dance is your chance to do the Trump.
That's right. We're having a good old time. We're doing the Trumpty Trump because, well, Trump is making it happen. I mean, once again, like him, dislike him, you cannot say that he is not a consequential president. When I say consequential, I mean he's making things happen. And you may not always like necessarily what's happening. A lot of people don't like what's happening because, well, they don't like Donald Trump. So therefore, they're pro-crime. They're pro-illegal immigration. It bothers them to see that that good things are actually happening. But you know what? Doesn't bother me one little bit. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying watching what's happening and how the president is, doing a really good job. There's obviously some things, that we'll be talking a little bit about. But, overall, like I said, and by the way, as I do with any elected official, I take the good, I weigh it against the bad, and I see where does it come out. And it's hard to argue if you are objective, if you are at the very least objective, it's hard to argue that President Trump isn't doing a great job for the country. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff. But first, we're going to do what we got to do. And that's we're going to start by paying our bills by giving a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. The Hitman Industries makes rifle and pistol caliber barrels. They are available for sale at any length. All you got to do is go to their website, hitmanindustries.net. and check them out today. If you've purchased an AR recently, chances are you already have one of their barrels, so you know how good they are. So if you're looking to do a brand new build, or maybe you're looking to rebarrel an old rifle, start with a barrel from Hitman Industries. And then we've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all levels of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. They've got coming up next month, they've got the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, which is all the Republican assemblies from across the nation. And they're all coming to California. It's going to be in Anaheim, California. You're going to want to check it out. Go to their website, cragop.org. That's cragop.org. And there'll be a link and all the information that you need to learn about the upcoming national convention. For those of you who have not heard of CRA, Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. That's how solidly conservative they are. So check them out today, cragop.org. And then you've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. All you have to do is go to hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. Make sure you use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there. And you are going to get your hog holster on discount. So go there, check them out, spend some money with them. Trust me, it's hogholsters.com, HAWG holsters.com. It's helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, if you're looking for tactical gear, if you're in EMS, or if you're in law enforcement, if you're in fire, if you're in whatever you're looking for in terms of outdoorsy tactical stuff, you need to go to uscombatgear.com. They have a huge selection. They have competitive prices, especially they specialize in group sales. So go there, check them out. And by the way, their customer service, especially on their group sales, second to none. Go to their website, uscombatgear.com, where you will find all things tactical except the gun. Now, if you're watching the program live today, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're taking your comments. So if you got something to say, you just want to give a shout out, let us know who you are and where you're watching from. We would love to hear from you. Just go ahead and give a shout out. I will be following your comments. Go ahead and give us a shout out. And if I find it to be interesting, I will go ahead and share it. And if not, I won't. And by the way, interesting, just so you know, interesting does not mean that you agree with us. All right. You don't have to agree with me, but just know that if you do disagree, that I do reserve the right to mock you because, well, that is what we do.
Oh, wow. Is that a mockingbird?
Another mockingbird? Another mockingbird?
Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Gotta love that one. Yeah. So yes, we do reserve to mock you. It's all in fun. We're all here. We're all having a good time. All right. So let's get into our stories today. Well, you now know that we are now into day 11, where the National Guard has been on the streets there in Washington D.C. and well, they've seen a dramatic drop in crime. We shared some of those crime statistics with you at the 7-day mark, which was last Thursday, and I'll share those with you again. Robbery down 46%, assault with a deadly weapon down 6%, carjacking down 83%. Car theft down 21%, violent crime down 22%, priority crime down 6%, all crimes down 8%. Now, that was just in the first 7 days. By the way, also during those first 7 days, they went their first period of time, over a week, the first week in modern history where Washington, D.C. did not have a single homicide in the District of Columbia. And by the way, that was 4 days ago. So we're now on day 11. It appears to be working. And, while you have seen protests from people who don't actually live in some of the more violent areas and some of the more crime-ridden areas of D.C., there are folks, and by the way, there are folks out there who don't like the idea of having the National Guard there just because they don't like the look. And by the way, there are those who have said that, oh, well, what they're doing is it's unconstitutional. No, it's not unconstitutional. And we've talked about this on last week's program. Literally in their home rule document, they have the ability, the president and the White House have the ability, and Congress have the ability to do exactly this, right? They have the ability to take over control of law enforcement, in particular in an emergency. And despite what people will tell you, and this is the funny part. So I get all of these people who see. I had a commentary that I did where I talk about it. And by the way, in my commentaries, in all of my commentaries, I do a lot of hyperlinking. And the reason why I do hyperlinking is not because I really want you to go to other stories, not because I'm trying to take commentary away from or whatever page you're on. It's because I believe in bringing receipts. In other words, I don't want you to just hear my opinion. I want you to understand that my opinion is an informed opinion and what has informed it. So I want you to go to the very same news stories, to the very same studies, to the very same documents and reports that I'm basing my opinion on. So if you have an opinion, if you have an issue with something that I say, then debunk it. Right? What I get from a bunch of people on this stuff is, well, crime was already going down in Washington, D.C. And here's what's funny, and this is how you know that someone never even read the piece. Because in the piece, I note that crime, while it is down now from a peak in 2023, the most recent numbers, which are from 2024, because they don't have the 2025 numbers yet, show that it had gone down. But that's like saying a 400-pound guy lost 10 pounds and he doesn't need to change a thing because he's already losing weight. No. It was at a peak. It had peaked. It is way high. And by the way, not only had it peaked in 2023, but it's still way higher than most other cities. By the way, let me clarify. When you start looking at the big cities, in particular the big cities that are run by Democrats, crime tends to be through the roof. And I hate to say it, and it's much higher than in other cities. And I know they want to sit there and they want to lie to you about that. They want to lie to you and say, well, crime is going down. No, I'm sorry, but how about a multi-year trend? Like, I'll give you an example. When we decided to crack down in California in the early 90s, and we passed things like 3 strikes, and we passed things like Megan's Law, right? When we added criminal enhancements, when Democrats actually still believed in, locking people up when they commit crimes, we saw over a 20-year period, we saw crime consistently go down year over year. You do that again, then you get to brag about it. Then you get to say there's no high crime problem. But when you hit a record high in 2023 and it goes down 1 year the very next year, no, you don't get to brag about that. You don't get to claim that crime is going down. Not yet. And by the way, in California, you know what we saw that actually turned that around, right? Yeah, it was our Attorney General, then Attorney General Kamala Harris decided that she was going to come in and be smart on crime, which basically meant things like no cash bail. It meant things like changing felonies to misdemeanors, changing misdemeanors to infractions, letting criminals out of jail, shutting down prisons, all work that's been extended by also our governor, Gavin Mussolini. All of these things actually then started to, as we started to see in the mid 2010, we started to see for the first time ever an increase, or for not ever, but the first time in over 20 years, increases in crime in the state of California. And regardless of what they are telling you, crime is still up in California. There is a reason why when I go to the grocery store, there's a reason why half of the stuff that I want to buy is locked behind a glass case. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it was their policies. In fact, Gavin Newsom was put on blast by a checkout clerk when she had to correct him and tell him, no, because of the laws that you supported, because of the laws that you put into place, we can't do anything. People can just walk out of here with stuff. Anyway, all that having been said, Trump has finally decided that in Washington, D.C., the one city where he can make a difference without having to ask anyone's permission, he's making a difference, and it is working. So that has him wondering, well, what can I do next? So he made the suggestion, and I can only say it is a suggestion, and it's for a couple of reasons. But he made the suggestion that, well, maybe, just maybe, we should go to Chicago. Or I would really like to send troops to Chicago. Maybe if we did, we could fix things there. Now, keep in mind, and Mike is, every time Mike's on the program, every time we talk about Chicago, he pulls up the website with the murder numbers from Chicago. And it's high every year. It is. And it's higher than most other major cities. And by the way, they blame Indiana for gun violence in their state, which makes absolutely no sense, since you would think if believing in the Second Amendment were such a bad thing, you would think there would be more gun crimes in Indiana, but there aren't. It's a culture thing there in Chicago, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, the suggestion came up, well, hey, why don't we send troops to Chicago? And I thought I had the story pulled up. Did I not pull it up? Okay, it looks like I didn't pull the story up. So let me just pull it up. Let's go Trump in Chicago. And sure enough, here we go. See, I'm good. It is literally that fast. This is how fast the news is hitting. So this is how you guys know this is happening live. Okay, that's the wrong story. Okay, I put it the wrong. Here we go. That's what I need. All I need to do is move it there. There we go. Bam. Trump's threat to deploy. Wait, uno momento. Let me pull this back over here. Pull you up here. There we go. Trump's threat to deploy troops in Chicago draws criticism from city and state officials. It says here, Illinois political leader and Chicago municipal officials are raising alarms over President Trump's threat to deploy the National Guard troops in the city, insisting that sending soldiers would be baseless and a clear case of federal overreach. Flanked by political, business, and religious leaders, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Monday blasted President's suggestion that federal soldiers were needed in the city and emphasized that what he said was a significant reduction in homicides, vehicle thefts, and other crimes in recent years. Quote, there is no emergency in Chicago that calls for armed military intervention. He said during a news conference, there is no insurrection. You know what that is. That's a January 6th jab. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points, Pritzker said. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab. Now, here's the thing that I will say about this. Okay, let's start with this. As I just had this conversation with you about what's going on in D.C., same thing can be said of Chicago. They saw a peak in 2023. It's gone down a little bit in 2024. By the way, let me not forget to mention that in many cases, the reason why the crime went down in D.C. is because, by the way, they're being investigated because they're underreporting crimes. In other words, they've been cooking the books. So there's that. Then there's the whole, what they've done in terms of taking felonies and converting them into misdemeanors, taking misdemeanors and converting them into infractions. So in a lot of cases, because they're not enforcing the law, fewer people are reporting a lot of the crimes. There's a huge underreporting of a lot of crimes as well. So it doesn't mean that these things aren't happening. What it means is that the crimes are going underreported or just flat out unreported. But I digress. The fact is that in the city of Chicago, crime and violent crime is still significantly higher than in most major American cities. It's just the truth. And I know they don't want to accept that because J.B. Pritzker doesn't live where all the murders are happening. He doesn't care about them, right? Mayor Brian Johnson doesn't care about them because he don't live in the neighborhoods where it's happening, right? I don't hear Black Lives Matter saying a word about it. Well, because, the problem is that it's largely black young men killing black young men. And we know that doesn't make the news. What makes the news is if a white person kills a black person, then it makes the news. If a law enforcement officer kills a black person, it makes the news. But if a young black male kills another young black male, it doesn't make the news. Why? Because it makes young black males look bad. Which, by the way, you are way, way more likely, if you're a young black male, to be killed by another young black male than you are to be killed by a law enforcement officer, or than you are to be killed by a white person. Way, way more likely. But they don't want to talk about that. And that's, by the way, that's not because they're black. It literally just has to do with the overwhelming majority of these issues have to deal with gangs, drugs, crime. That's it. It's a crime, drug, gangs issue, right? That disproportionately impacts these communities. It is which, by the way, people who live in these communities want to see more law enforcement, because guess what? When the cops are there, the criminals scurry away, right? Because most of the people who live in these neighborhoods are good people. They pay their taxes, they work hard, they want to live in a peaceable neighborhood. They're not the ones who have a problem with what Donald Trump is doing, because as they see it, it makes their community safer. Like I just said, 11 days in a row of no homicides. Mayor of Chicago, if you could go 11 days in your city with no homicides, why would you say no? Explain that one to your constituents. Explain it to me and your constituents. If you could have 11 days in a row with no homicides, why would you say no? I'll wait. Yeah, I didn't think so. It's because they don't want to be seen that they are ineffective. They don't want you to know and understand that the reason why crime is so high is because of their policies. It's because they are soft on crime. It's because they see people who commit crimes as victims, and they're not. Well, to a certain degree, they are victims, but they're victims of your policies. See, anybody, any person, when we have children, right? Our children, until they are old enough to develop self-discipline, we as their parents become their discipline, right? We are the ones who help them to understand the value of good choices and the negative consequences of bad choices. We provide that discipline so that when they become older, and by the way, I'm not just talking about spanking or anything like that. I'm just talking about you help them to learn about choices and the consequences, good or bad, of those choices and how their fate is in their hands. But when you remove the consequences, when you say, well, whatever choices you make don't matter, then they're going to make the choices that seem easy. They're going to make the choices that seem fun. They're going to make some bad choices. And then when you eliminate the negative consequences, then they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep doing it. And in many of these communities, in many of these cases, you have instances where you have, and be real, you got kids growing up with no dad in the house. Who's usually the disciplinarian? Right? Who's the one who usually provides those boundaries, those borders, right? Who's the one who usually does that? Yeah, it's usually dad. It is. It's usually dad. I'm not saying it's always. I'm not saying it's only. I'm just saying usually. I'm generalizing. So you've got no discipline or there's a decreased likelihood of discipline at home. Then when they go to school, you tell the teachers they can't discipline them. So there's no discipline at school. You have one child who can take out an entire classroom and keep you from being able to be successful, right? Who can disrupt an entire classroom, keeping students from learning? My God, if you suspend them, well, that's racist. In other words, if you remove that child, that student from the classroom so that the other students can learn, well, then you're racist. So we got to keep that kid in the classroom. We have to keep putting teachers at risk and their classmates at risk. Because in some cases, and I'm saying all, I'm not even going to say most, some cases they become violent. And so here we go now. So now there's no discipline at home. There's no discipline at school. So what do you think is going to happen when they're out there in them streets? They're going to run up against another undisciplined young person. Who have been taught no boundaries because they're not getting it at home. And I know that sounds bad. I know y'all don't like hearing that. And I know a lot of you out there probably raise your kids with discipline. But guess what? There's a lot of parents who don't. And I'm using the term parent very loosely. There are a lot of people under whose care they are supposed to be who are not teaching them discipline, who are not helping them. And they're letting them out in these streets and they're going to send them to school and they're not getting it. I remember one time I was at a concert and heard CeCe Winans say this. She said, you better whoop your kids because if you don't whoop them, somebody gonna whoop them. Somebody out in them streets gonna whoop them. Somebody at school's gonna whoop them, or somebody in jail. Somebody gonna whoop them. Because you eventually learn about consequences. The problem is this, is that the older you get, the more severe those negative consequences are for bad choices. And if you've not learned self-discipline when you were younger, you're not putting yourself you're not going to be in a position where you're deciding from two goods. Oftentimes, you don't have a lot of good choices because you haven't learned self-discipline that helps put you in a place to make good choices. But they don't want to say anything about that. No, they want to blame the cops. They want to blame Donald Trump. They want to blame the white man. They want to blame Republicans. They want to blame everybody except where the blame should actually be. And that's on them. I'm sorry, but I take responsibility I may not be responsible for how my kids have wound up or where they wind up, but I'm responsible for how they start. That's my number one job, is to get them started off right, to make sure they know and they understand they have the basic lessons of life that will allow them to be successful in life. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to be successful. They're doing pretty good. I like what I see so far, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee it. They've got to apply them. Just like I had to apply, my parents taught me and I had to apply it. And so anyway, I'm sorry to get off on that tangent, but I really do believe that there's a lot can change. And I think that one of the things we see with this, what's happening in DC, is we see that when there is a presence of discipline, of law enforcement, we see that the undisciplined, the people who don't want to go to jail, they skedaddle. I think, and while I'm not a fan of, by the way, just so you know, I'm not a fan of American troops on American soil in cities. I'm much more in favor of them coordinating with local law enforcement. If there's something that they can do to temporarily come in and help, I want to see that happen. The president does not have authority to just shove them out there on those streets. I don't like seeing that happen. I wish the policymakers in these cities and in these states would, instead of playing politics, go to the president and say, hey, I see what happened in DC. I want us to have that. Let's coordinate and let's make it happen. I want to make my city as safe as DC is right now, or safer. How about that? That's what I'd like to see. But I don't have much faith in the politicians. All right, moving right along. DC National Guard, by the way, speaking of the DC National Guard, they are now going to be able to carry duty firearms. I am all for this. I support this because, well, I'm hoping that as a part of this, they're going to get some sort of training when it comes to how to handle it. But anyway, let me pull up the story here. This is also an NBC News story. It says National Guard troops in D.C. begin carrying firearms. National Guard troops deployed in Washington this month to support President Donald Trump's effort to mitigate crime began carrying firearms Sunday evening, according to a federal task force managing the operation. The majority of the Guard members will carry M17 pistols. They're service-issued weapons. A Defense Department official with knowledge of the planning said, while a small number of troops will be armed with their service M4 rifles, troops are authorized to use their weapons for self-protection as a last resort in response to an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm, the federal task force said. A spokesman for the task force said National Guard members supporting safety and security will be armed, whereas troops who are assigned to beautification tasks across the district, which includes tasks like community restoration, most likely will not be. Several armed National Guard troops were seen Sunday evening patrolling the Chinatown neighborhood of D.C., wearing patches labeled MP to signify their role as military police. So in other words, these are people who are trained in law enforcement, are the MPs, the ones who are wearing the things. I like the way they put this. So in other words, it's going to be for self-defense because, first of all, you have a right to keep and bear arms. And in the D.C., we now know, because of Bruen, we know that you have that right to carry in public. Obviously the local municipality determines how that happens. And being as the president is the authority in that municipality, he can determine that the military do have the ability to be able to carry their firearm. And once again, as a tool of last resort. And I want to say that again, as a tool of last resort. In other words, no, they're not going to be using it to break up crime. No, what they are going to be doing is they are going to be doing it in the event that it becomes necessary for them to be able to protect their lives or protect the lives of others. I got no problem with that. I also know that they will be held to a higher degree of accountability should something go wrong. And I'm hoping they are making sure that they understand that. The rules of engagement for the military when you are deployed at home is very different than the rules when you are abroad. It ain't rocket science, but when you are in the heat of the battle, realize, yeah, you're not on a battlefield. Even Washington, D.C. is not a battlefield. You're on American streets. Standards a little different. Just saying. Not saying, just saying. And I say that because I don't want people who are out there who are anti-gun to think that we're not thinking about that, because I think we are. I do believe that they are in this process as they're looking to let these folks out. Now, let's talk about another thing that the president has signed, and this has to do with the idea of flag burning. One of the reports that's coming out of D.C. today is that he signed a couple of executive orders today. One of them would eliminate cashless bail throughout the country, and that's good. I like that. I think that you should have to put something up in order to get bail, because we've seen how just letting criminals back out on the street has been a very, very bad thing. And by the way in which he's doing that is he's tying it to federal funds. So in other words, if you're a municipality that receives certain federal funds and you have cashless bail, you won't get those funds because, well, and once again, I don't have the details for you right here, but I do believe that it's something that is well within his purview from what I understand. But the other one was the one I really want to talk about, and that has to do with flag burning. Let me pull the story. It says President Donald Trump began Monday by signing executive orders in the Oval Office targeting cashless bail and flag burning. He then hosted South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. Trump continued to defend the administration's actions in Washington, D.C., blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't want to hear about that. Did he? Okay, is there no more here? No. Okay, so anyway, what he did was he's made it a crime punishable by up to a year in prison and fines for burning an American flag. I believe in the symbol that the American flag is. I don't support the idea of burning an American flag. I have to admit, though, I'm a little torn on the idea of making it first of all, I don't want to do this. If you're going to make it a crime to burn the American flag, I think it should be a crime. I don't think it should be something that's done by executive order. I think that Congress should pass a law and the president should sign it into law. I have a problem. I have a problem with that being done via executive order because it can be rescinded just that fast. So there's that. But then there's the idea that, we're talking freedom of speech here. And this is a little bit of the libertarian coming out of me. Keep in mind that, I think you ought to be able to speak your mind about how you feel about certain things. And I think that if you are frustrated or you feel like the symbols of this country aren't being well represented, there are some people who love the American flag who would burn it because what they're saying is, we realize our nation is under attack. I'm not a person who would do that. Flying the flag upside down, that's the universal symbol of distress. I'm more for that. I'm not for defacing the flag, but I very much believe in the right to freedom of speech. And we already see how we have some governments who've made things like burning an LGBTQ flag or destroying All Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter flag. Those can get you arrested for hate crimes. Now, what's funny is that's speech. You get a chance to say that. And those, by the way, it's like I'm saying I don't believe in these things. You have a right not to believe in those things. You have a right not to believe in America. I don't know what sense it makes because it's one of the few countries where you can say, I don't believe in it, but you can still be here and benefit from all of the blessings of being here. But if I truly believe in the right to freedom of speech, you have a right to say it. And if you're going to say it in that manner, now I also believe that you ought to be able to burn a BLM flag. You ought to be able to burn the LGBTQ trans. I don't know. It changes. The flag changes every other month. But the point I'm making here is that we don't elevate our position in our speech by destroying the speech of others, by inhibiting or prohibiting the speech of others. We don't. We need to learn how to have peaceful discourse and discussion. And hopefully it doesn't involve, destroying our national symbols. I think less of you if you destroy our national symbols. I think less of your positions. You're not going to win me over by doing that. But I believe nonetheless you have a right to do it. So I don't know how I feel about that. If it's something that is so significant that we got to make it a crime, though, you know what? Congress pass a law. President sign it into law. I don't like the idea of doing it via an executive order. I just don't. And it's just one more thing. And once again, there's so many things that the president is doing that I like, that I believe in. But doing so many of these things via executive order creates two problems. One, it feeds into the authoritarian image, which I don't think he's being authoritarian, but it gives them cannon fodder. It gives them fodder for that argument. But the worst part about it is that as soon as the next left-wing Democrat gets elected president, it gets undone. As soon as he does. So what I'm hoping happens, and this is what I'm sincerely hoping, is that as a part of this, he is working with Congress to have someone introduce a law relating to flag burning, have someone introduce a law relating to Title IX, have someone introduce a law, and then you can say, as all we're doing is taking what the president has done and we're making it permanent. That's where Congress needs to be right now. That's what Congress needs to be focusing on, because now you're showing respect for separation of powers, and then you can also have a full policy discussion about it. Why is it good? Why is it bad? And you have an opportunity to actually, make your case to the public. Make your case on the platform where it's supposed to be. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. All right, our next story, and this is one I can honestly say hurts my heart. So Friday, I went to an event. I went to an event that was someplace where there was no internet or had very, very poor internet connection. And as I got there, I had received some messages from some folks, or at least I got them while I was driving, and I don't check my messages while I'm driving. So when I got it. And there's a gentleman who is a mentor of mine. Sam Paredes was the founder of Gun Owners of California. Him and Senator H.L. Richardson, former retired California Senators H.L. Richardson, and they played a significant role and were also part of the founders for Gun Owners of America. In fact, Gun Owners of California existed before Gun Owners of America. Sam has been a fixture in Sacramento and California politics and Northern California for decades. When I went to work for the Firearms Policy Coalition, I'd never lobbied before. I'd been a legislative staffer, but I'd never lobbied before. Sam took me under his wing and became my big brother. And, he helped me he helped this fiery, guy who just wanted to just go after it. And he helped me to understand. It's like, that old saying. It's like, look, I'm like, let's, that one about the bull. He's like, tells his lady, let's run down there and let's mate with all those cows down there. And he says, son, slow down. How about we walk down there? Anyway, you guys get the joke. I don't want to be crude, but Sam was, you won't find many people in politics, especially in California, who is as widely respected, works on the unpopular side. When I say the unpopular side, I mean among many in this industry here in California and Sacramento, being a gun rights advocate it's not a positive thing. I will tell you, it's my career outside of gun rights has taken a hit because I was such a vocal advocate for gun rights. So I can only imagine what a guy who did it all of his life did, and how and the reputation he could have had. But you know what? People on the right and the left respected Sam and loved Sam, and he was a humble individual, but had more influence than I think he would ever acknowledge or admit. Largely because he gave so much of the credit for the influence and what was going on in his life to his Lord and Savior. But I want to share this video that Gun Owners of America put out because I think if you didn't know Sam, I think this will give you a good sense of who Sam was.
From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. If you can see life through my eyes, I see a bright, shining light. I see a lot of enthusiasm. I see a lot of hard work. And I see a lot of patriots who love this country. And from 1975 to 1986, not a single anti-gun bill was passed in the state of California. Not one. So Senator Richardson realized, you know what? We need to do this nationwide. And within a year, we started Gun Owners of America. And the rest is history. We are the only no compromise pro-Second Amendment organization in the world, not just the country. Our job is to gather, to build each other up, to learn from each other, to get excited, and then to scatter across the fruited plain, spreading the message of the Second Amendment and what other people need to do to be a part of it.
Sam Paredes, that was an awesome man. I will disagree with him on one thing because the Firearms Policy Coalition is definitely no compromise on the Second Amendment. But Sam, you will be missed. I can't even begin to tell you how much my walk in the Second Amendment community, my walk in just the civil rights community has been impacted by wisdom and your caring and taking time out to just help a fellow traveler make sure that he was heading in the right path. So thank you, brother. You will be missed, but I know that you are right there with the good Lord himself, probably teaching him how to shoot. All right, let's move on. Now it's time for our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces, one word. Just like that, you will find it. All right, so we've got a couple of videos. We got a couple of images that we're going to share with you today. And obviously, some of the images are going to come to you from our good friends over at the Babylon Beat, fake news that you can trust. Let's find this first one here. This first somber Democrats mourn DC going a record 10 days without a murder. Yeah, some of them got issues with that. Yes, they do. I don't know why they do, but they do. Because, I know why they do. Because Trump. That's really all it is. Just because Trump. Okay. Oh, here's another one. Okay, this one is a fun one. It says, Trump decrees anyone who does not bow down to the American flag when music plays shall be tossed into a fiery furnace. Yeah, it's a hit at Trump. Okay, fine. You guys don't like it. That's okay. I consider it to be fun. All right, how about this one? How about we'll do this fun one? You guys are going to hate this, those who are just listening to it. But those of you who watch it, you're going to get it. All right, so here's what's funny about that one. So it starts off with a brother, black dude, in a MAGA hat, wearing a sign, or holding up a sign that says "Deport white liberal women," and he's right across the street from a protest where they're protesting Trump, and it's a bunch of white liberal women. It was funny. All right, this last one here, you're going to love this video. So Mamdani decided he was going to go to a men's festival and show that he's a real man. And he's going to get on this bench and he's going to try and bench press. Let me show you, pull up the video here.
This is how you move up in the poll. This is how you move up in the poll.
It's 135 pounds.
This is how you move up in the poll. Yeah. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Yeah! Let me get three! Let me get three! Let me get three!
So he got up like he was a boss. I'm like, wait, he had, first of all, he had the guy in the center and he had a guy on each end helping him with 135 pounds. Now, all I can say is this. I don't even warm up with 135 pounds. I literally, if I do, it's like I'm doing 40 of them to warm up. Yeah, you're not going to win. You're not going to win any, you're not going to win anything like that. Not saying, just saying. Anyway, folks, that's going to bring us to the end of our program. But before we go today, we got one more quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. You'll find them online at hitmanindustries.net. Rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase today. Get the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Check them out at cragop.org. If you want to be a part of California's future today, you got to join CRA. And then we've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, you want to go to the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun at uscombatgear.com. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in on this fine Monday. I had a good time, as I always do every time we get a chance to get together. Do us a favor, let your friends know that this is the place to be, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, every Monday through Friday. We love hearing from you. I hope to hear from you soon.